Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and today we'll be taking a look at how it's like to play Windwalker monks when it comes to Shadowlands. Monks right now, currently in the game, is one of the least played classes in general. We can all speculate as to why this might be, but my suggestion is going to be because Windwalker is not as strong as some of the other melee, or at least hasn't been in Battle for Azeroth. Trust me, I play Windwalker on live, and it's actually a lot of fun, and a lot of people are missing out just how good it feels in PvE. It is a spec that kind of needs a bit of gear before it gets good, but the playstyle has always been top-notch, very enjoyable with its mastery of never-repeating abilities, and I've been a huge fan of that for a while. But how is the spec looking when it comes to Shadowlands? We will take a look at Mistweaver and Brewmaster maybe at some point in the video, but I really want to focus on a Windwalker, the master of jabs and kicks and punches, the follower of teachings of Zuen, the DPS alternative for what monks can bring into the next expansion. I should also mention this is an alpha, so this is really early look at where monks are at. Blizzard could change them in drastic, massive, various ways. So this isn't a finalized product, just an early look at where monks right now are on the Shadowlands alpha. I have to say that Blizzard decided, you know what, there is a focus to the spec. There is a focus in terms of how you're supposed to play it. The Windwalker playstyle of the mastery, never allowing you to repeat abilities to do more damage because of it, is still the core of what monk is about. If you're someone who wasn't a fan of this ability and this playstyle, then I have bad news. But if you're someone who enjoys this playstyle, then this is good things. Because monks could change in playstyle. Maybe Blizzard could have went back to the charges of Tiger's Eye Brew as a basic rotation as well. But I do like this mastery playstyle where you are able to follow abilities in a different interval, and this creates for a smoother rotation. You're not always spending energy. You're sometimes spending energy, then you're spending chi, then you're spending energy which generates chi, then you're spending chi to do more damage, and it creates this natural smooth flow. It's a class that can benefit from stats like haste, but it doesn't necessarily have to, so it means you can just really focus into gear that can give you a lot more damage. Some of you guys want to play a class that doesn't really need that much gear to feel good. I always felt monk fit in that category. So monk, for the most part, the basic rotation of your abilities is not going to change much. In terms of the utility that you have right now in Battle for Azeroth through talents, those for the most part stay. But there are some different things that were added towards Windwalker in particular. Let's take a look at everything they've got going on so far that is new. First of all, James Chi is on the talents instead of being a trait, so that's something you can consider instead of hit combo or Russian Jade Wind. Zuen has been made baseline, so that's interesting. A new ability has been added to all monk specs, and that's called Expel Harm. It is not quite as strong as the PvP version of this ability with reverse harm, but it's a 15-second cooldown for very little energy, heals you for a very meager amount, and does damage based on how much health it healed recently. I tried using this ability pretty regularly when it comes to the monk gameplay, and I gotta be honest, it feels kind of weird to press. Blizzard, I think, wanted with this ability to give you a way to insta-cast heal yourself as a melee or as a tank or as a healer, kind of like an emergency thing for very little energy. And this ability might even play into the Windwalker playstyle as a damaging ability that you can use that doesn't generate your chi or anything, but will work towards your mastery if, let's say, you're kind of stuck jabbing and then all you can do is jab again to generate more chi later. To me though, when I played with this ability, it seemed more like a way to kind of puff yourself up with a heal. Just something to sustain yourself, so you don't have to stand there and cast a Vivify as a Windwalker. Just something you can use very quickly, very inexpensive, and this ability really doesn't heal for a lot. So I'm not really sure if Blizzard wants to maybe buff this ability in the future, but right now as it is, Expel Harm just feels a little maybe too weak. It doesn't really feel worth a global for a Windwalker. Maybe for a Brewmaster it has a lot more health potential to it. And I know they're adding a little tidbit with this ability for Mistweaver. So if you use an Expel Harm while you channel into the mist, you'll not only heal yourself but an ally as well. And this does have some radial AoE damage going out with it too. But when it comes to using this regular on a monk, it's not an ability that's super expensive, so that is nice. You can fit it into your rotation fairly easily, but the amount of healing it does for you is very minuscule. In some cases it feels like I might as well not press it, and there's other abilities where I could press just to get a solid heal for myself. Definitely would love to see this ability buffed in the future. Maybe for Windwalkers, it's maybe too nerfed, and something Blizzard can balance at a later time. But right now, it just doesn't feel quite as satisfying. Although I try to play with it, it's good and easy to play in. It's easy to throw it into your rotation, but it seems like a little bit too weak to press. When it comes to monks, you'll actually have some meaningfully cool decisions when it comes to defensives, as monks are generally squishy, but they come with a variety of different defenses to keep themselves afloat. Dampen Harm is really strong, so is Diffuse Magic, especially for magic damage, and then Inner Strength is this extra passive. And I think all three of these are good because monks for Windwalkers now have a baseline wall. It is something like a Windwalker or Mistweaver or a Brewmaster wall. They used to have the Fortifying Brew. It's 2-minute cooldown. It is a slightly nerfed version than some of the other expansions have had this, but it's still another baseline defensive for monks. So Dampen Harm, Diffuse Magic, Inner Strength actually become all more viable options because now you can have Inner Strength stacked together, Fortifying Brew, Dampen Harm stacked together, so is Diffuse. So in that whole row, that's actually a great defensive choice for what you can do with your Windwalker Monk. I should mention that maybe when it comes to the content for raids and dungeons, if a lot of the content is still going to be so heavily focused around having an immunity, like a Cloak of Shadows or a Demon Hunter immunity with Netherwalk, maybe Ice Block, when it comes to mages, then I think monks might fall on the wayside because you'll need a class that can immune damage. A monk right now can't really immune damage. You can redistribute that damage with Karma while popping Fortifying Brew so you can have more health to soak, maybe together with Dampen Harm, but you can't immune damage. So we will see how well monk plays in the future when it comes to the design of some of the mechanics, but if this class still doesn't get an immune, it could be behind other classes unless it simply just out damages them. So that's something definitely to follow up as a monk player going into the next expansion. Another big thing that Blizzard decided to change when it comes to monks is going to be your cooldowns. You will still have short cooldowns. You'll have your 2-minute cooldown, but instead of it being Touch of Death, you'll have Zuen, which is baseline for every single monk. Well, if you're a Mistweaver, you'll get the Yulon, the Jade Serpent, or you can talent into the Crane for more damage and healing. And if you're a tank, you'll get Dave, the Ox. So every monk spec is going to get a Celestial. For Windwalkers right now, Zuen doesn't really do anything special. He just claws your enemy, kind of like Elemental Shaman, Fire Elemental. He just does damage, does a little bit of cleave. This changes the playstyle for monks a little bit because the Touch of Death playstyle was a playstyle where you popped certain trinkets or certain abilities or certain talents to min-max the burst while Touch of Death is up. Hell, in PvP, monks would actually use trinkets and defensives from the honor talents to increase the base health because Touch of Death did damage based on your health plus the damage that you funneled into it, which in a sense was kind of toxic. As a monk, you would just pop a bunch of defensives and you would Touch of Death, get through full rotation. If the enemy doesn't have a trinket, it'll basically be a one-shot, which was cheesy, but Blizzard kind of removes this. With them changing to Zuen, you still have a 2-minute cooldown. So like Touch of Death was a 2-minute cooldown to focus a singular target, Zuen is going to be there to claw at your target, but also have a bit of cleave. And with Zuen, you might be able to relax and go for different talents to create more of a sustained based and focused playstyle rather than, you know, hammering as much damage into a singular target and then hoping for the best. You will still have, again, very short CDs. You'll have your images, which are Storm, Earth, and Fire. You'll have Zuen, which is a 2-minute cooldown. So you still have a lot of short CDs. You just won't have that massive Touch of Death to really funnel the damage into a singular enemy. Touch of Death got reworked to be back to that execute mechanic playstyle that monks have had in the past. This ability, if you're using it on an enemy that's below health than you, is going to just execute the enemy. So you'll be able to Touch Death enemies in dungeon trash packs to eliminate them completely. So as long as your team is able to put a little bit of pressure to get the enemy low enough, maybe around like 30% health, 40%, 20%, you can just execute them and take the enemy out of the equation completely, which is going to be quite cool for monks. But Touch of Death will also come with extra mechanics, which will make monks think a little bit more about how they want to approach the situation. If you are a healer monk, then when you Touch Death, you'll spawn a bunch of healing orbs. So yes, you can Touch Death the enemy, but you can also save it for later with like a boss or something. You Touch Death when you need a lot of healing, and you'll spawn a bunch of healing orbs. You'll do the damage, but you will delay it in order to make sure that everybody gets a heal or two. If you're a tank, you can also use Touch of Death, but using Touch of Death will clear all your stagger. So let's say you're doing a boss fight in a raid, and yes, you can Touch Death the boss when they're low enough. You might want to delay it when you take a bunch of damage at the end game of the fight, and you'll be able to clear the stagger and be a lot healthier. So stuff like this could be very, very interesting in order to have monks choose when they want to Touch Death. And some monks might even choose to touch death later, because for Windwalker, when you touch death, you spawn a bunch of chi orbs. Chi orbs don't really give you damage, but they give you opportunity to use your Fist of Furies, to use your kicks, to use all your AoEs, so you could kind of delay the touch of death until more ads spawn, so you can have easy, direct funnel AoE damage, or you could wait until all your cooldowns are back up and running, and then you would summon Zoan, get images, touch death, and you'll go through your full rotation if needed. So there's at least some choices of how you can play that ability. Besides that, Blizzard left alone everything that was fun about a monk. Massive moments ability, check. It's always super fun to be able to roll around or teleport or dragon kick across the room, because the monk mobility is just super fun to play with. It always was enjoyable, and the mobility always never really kept you stuck with mechanics. It always felt like you had a plan B. And as someone who plays plenty of rogue, I like having a plan B, just being able to kind of rush away from an enemy. So classes that are mobile have always been something that I've enjoyed. They're fast paced, and all that mobility gives you opportunity to make some crazy cool plays. Monks still, as a Windwalker, bring quite a bit of utility to the team. From the CC to the debuff that you put up on the enemy, making all the other classes that are physical in nature do more damage, which might make monks really want it if Windwalkers are going to be panning out and Fury Warriors are going to be panning, or I guess Warriors in general with their Necrolord Covenant ability. If that's going to be the meta for a melee heavy composition, everybody's going to want to bring a monk. And I'm hoping that Windwalkers are going to be at least a little bit more durable, with them given a little bit extra tankiness with some of their ability. And maybe some of the self-healing mechanics they might be able to play with is going to be quite nice as well. I like the change overall to Zoan. I think it's going to be a better, more reliable cooldown. It's a pet that kind of does things for you, instead of the touch of death playstyle, which could take away some of the toxic mechanics and playstyles that people have done in the past, while delegating your touch of death to a massive execute, which feels super satisfying to just eliminate an enemy out of the game, but also can be used strategically depending on the fight. I really do hope that monks are finely tuned, because I think that might be what comes down to Blizzard figuring out if monk is going to be a good class that's really strong or not that great. If monks are not finely tuned when it comes to the damage output, then they don't really bring anything new to the table. They're not quite a rogue with Cloak of Shadows or Demon Hunter with the debuff. Monks do bring a debuff, but they have also a healer spec and a tank spec that they could play. And if those specs are more effective in dungeons or in raids, I don't really know how many Windwalkers are going to be brought for the Windwalker. I mean, even Enhancement Shamans, as rough as they're looking right now, got a totem that buffs the damage of other melee, which could be incredible. So hopefully Blizzard fine-tunes Windwalkers on the alpha going into the beta, because it's a super enjoyable playstyle, and I think a lot more people should give it a go. And I think with certain Covenant abilities you might find complete new niches in terms of how strong Windwalkers can be, but it's really going to be up to the developers to figure out just how strong they want to make Windwalkers, and I'm hoping for the best. They really are super enjoyable, so devs, I trust you to make Windwalkers as good as you possibly can, because I think that a lot more people playing Windwalker would be very enjoyable experience. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. You guys let me know what you think about Windwalkers and Shadowlands so far, and I'll see all of you guys in another one.